Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu salam ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Deliverance from Error, Al-Munqadh min al-Dalal. And we have been reading about the four classes of seekers, and we have reached in our reading the fourth one, Sufism, the Sufis, the path to Sufism. And we have reached, we did read about Imam Al-Ghazali's struggle, which extended for about 6 months, beginning with Rajab, and we are in Rajab right now, in the year 488 of Hijri calendar, of the Islamic calendar. And he knew that knowledge is not enough. He knew, everybody knows. We gave an example about someone who knows all the necessary action about mouth hygiene, toothbrushes, toothpaste, mouthwash, but he doesn't use any of it. Same thing about medicine, same thing about diet, same thing about exercise. Knowledge in itself is not enough. Same thing when we talk about Sufism, because the idea is to shun this world, hoarding things. That's not going to bring you happiness, and it's not success. As a civilization, you need material wealth. As a state, you need material wealth. That's a different story. And he declared his intention that he was going to go to Mecca, which ultimately he did. Because why did he say, I'm going to Mecca? For Hajj, of course, rather than saying, I'm going into seclusion, into isolation, into a retreat, if you will. He didn't say this. No one would accept this. He was the professor par excellence in the Muslim world, the scholar par excellence, and we spoke about this. Ultimately, he reached the decision. He distributed his wealth, kept a little bit for himself and his family. And if you are struggling against fame, you are going to live the life incognito. And he went to Damascus, and we spoke about the notion of Sham. And he stayed there for 2 years. Then I traveled from Damascus to Jerusalem. In Sham, he stayed for 2 years. لا شغل لي إلا العزلة والخلوة. He did nothing except to being in seclusion, and he would go through these spiritual exercises, if you will. For 2 years, my only occupation was seclusion and solitude, and spiritual exercise, and combat with a view to devoting myself to the purification of my soul and the cultivation of virtues, and cleansing my heart for the remembrance of God Most High in the way I had learned from the writings of the Sufis. I used to pray in seclusion for a time in the mosque, meaning the Umayyad mosque, mounting to its minaret for the whole day and shutting myself in. when he said the whole day, of course, except for the time of prayer, except when he needed to refresh his wudu, etc. Then I traveled to Jerusalem, إلى بيت المقدس, where I would go daily into the Dome of the Rock and shut myself in. From the narrative of Imam Al-Ghazali, he said, while in English it says the Dome of the Rock, here he says the rock itself. Now, how do you enter the rock? And I think this is really the part that where I would probably expand a little bit. Of course, the Dome of the Rock is the octagonal structure that surrounds the rock. And physically, the rock is not an organized shape. It's a natural rock, and people pray usually around the rock as part of being at Al-Aqsa Mosque in the direction of the Qibla. And it's quite spacious. So whether you pray, if there's an Imam at the Dome of the Rock, then he will be, of course, to the south, and there'll be a degree southeast, but in general, we talk about the direction of the Qibla. And there are quite few rows immediately behind the Imam before the rows reach the edge where you cannot have any more rows immediately behind the Imam because of the rock itself. Now, the rows could continue either to the because it's octagonal, so you will head the rows will continue northeast and northwest of where the Imam stands. Then the rows will head northwest where it was northeast, and north east where it was northwest. And then you'd be pretty close now between the northern part of the rock and the northern gate of the Dome of the Rock. We have 4 gates aligned with the north, south, east, and west, and then you have windows placed, a window in each of the not exactly, I would say, but you have the northeastern, northwestern, southeastern, and southwestern walls. Okay. Now, there are stairs that lead to beneath. There's a room, a cave beneath the rock, and you'll take few stairs, and the entrance to the cave beneath the rock is the direction of it is southeastern, and obviously there was a door to the cave. That's I would say a pretty plausible conjecture for to interpret what Imam Al-Ghazali said here, since he said وأغلق بابها على نفسي. If it were the dome of the rock, you don't do that. You talk about hundreds of people who are inside the dome of the rock, and you don't really have exclusive right. But it seems that he would go into the cave when people, of course, are not um, there and probably are not interested, or he would close the door so that people would not venture inside. So, and literally, the stairs that I refer to when you go under, beneath the rock to that cave, it's it's uh, it's possible that it had a door, at one point. There's an entrance. But the oral tradition is that Imam Al-Ghazali lived inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We'll talk about the compound. It's like Al-Haram al-Sharif. Remember what Mujir Hanbali said literally 502 years ago. He passed away 501 years ago. He said in his book on the history of Jerusalem and Hebron, Al-Uns al-Jalil fi Tarikh al-Quds wal-Khalil, he said that Al-Aqsa Mosque is the name of the space. And he also mentioned that he measured the width and the length of Al-Aqsa Mosque twice, wall to wall, with a team, of course, wall to wall. That's the length. And he said about the width, he measured the width of Al-Aqsa Mosque from near the Bab al-Rahmah all the way to the Tankaziyya school. He mentioned that. And in each case, twice for verification. On top of Bab al-Rahmah. Bab al-Rahmah is a very beautiful entrance. It's a hall with it's massive. It can accommodate at least a couple of hundred people. People of the book believe that that Christ, if you want to say the Messiah, would enter through that gate, which it has been closed, most probably from the time of Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, not because of theological implications, but it's a weak spot, since it's not probably they could not defend it easily, so it's a weak place really in the area. At any rate, so Imam Ghazali lived in the rooms above the gate of mercy, Bab al-Rahmah. There are two gates, Bab al-Rahmah, Bab al-Tawbah. And in the English name has nothing to do with the Arabic Islamic names. This is the Golden Gate, Bab Dhahabi. We don't use that, of course, ourselves. I think there is a need for one day to speak about all the details about this gate, because the Israeli occupation prevented Muslims from praying there, from using it for quite a few years under false pretexts. So Imam Ghazali came to Jerusalem, and I would like to utilize the opportunity when, in the popular narrative, and people, in their lectures, there are, at Al-Aqsa Mosque, you could hear them sometimes mention, occasionally they might mention the story that when Imam Ghazali arrived at Al-Aqsa Mosque, and he entered Al-Aqsa Mosque, he found 365 circles of learning, and he lamented that so he thought that was not enough. That's a popular narrative. The fact is, if you talk about now historical record, there was only one circle of learning, and that's a big difference. Things have changed. There are many schools at Al-Aqsa Mosque, many endowments, many schools surrounding Al-Aqsa Mosque, many arbita, many zawiyas surrounding Al-Aqsa Mosque. There was only another circle of learning in the city, not at Al-Aqsa Mosque, that belonged to the Fatimids, because Jerusalem was under the rule of the Fatimids at the time, and they ruled from Egypt. And so much so that the Imam at Al-Aqsa Mosque would, during the Friday prayer, would make a dua for the Khalifa al-Fatimi. A tough, there was, the policy in Jerusalem was not okay at the time by the Fatimids, especially. There were a couple of things. This is not the time to talk about it, otherwise one needs to go into the to full details. And when Imam Al-Ghazali was there in Jerusalem, he also made he visited Khalil, Hebron, visiting the graves of Sayyidina, the grave of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ala alam. And over there, he pledged not to do three things. And one of them, not to visit anyone in office. Number two, not to accept gifts from them. Number three, not to debate anyone. And I'm interested in the third one, not to debate anyone. The issue is you will be on your own side as a possibility, not on the side of truth in a debate. You would like to emerge winner. If you were on the side of truth, then you would not care who would ultimately utter the truth. If you're the other person, the other scholar, the other thinker who is involved in this debate, if he happens to say the right thing, would you admit it in public? It seems this is the reason. Remember that Imam Ghazali would win debates at the Muaskar right before Nizam al-Mulk appointed him to the Nizamiyya of Baghdad. He was eloquent, he was knowledgeable, and he could argue, but he found that it was not good for his own ego. And the whole journey was about to annihilate that ego. So the annihilation that the Sufis speak about, it's not that you don't exist anymore. It's not really pantheism. People might get the wrong idea. No. It's trying to reach that stage where the ego is no more. You don't feed the ego. And it's possible that one would feed the ego time and again. Then he said that then I was inwardly moved by an urge to perform the duty of the pilgrimage and draw succor from the blessings of Mecca and Medina, and the visit to the tomb of the Apostle of God, God's blessing and peace be upon him. After finishing my visit to the friend of God, God's blessings and peace be upon him, so I traveled to Hijaz. Friend of God is Al-Khalil, and that's the meaning of Al-Khalil, the friend of God. Al-Khalil is friend, a close, but in this context it's Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Then certain concerns and the appeals of my children drew me to my native land. So I came back to it after being the person most unlikely to return to it. When he set, you know, foot on that path of Sufism, of purification of the soul, of emptying the heart from worldliness, he did not think that he would return to Baghdad or. And since he spent 2 years in Damascus, and let's say that he has spent a year for to travel to pilgrimage, and obviously most of his time was he visited Al Khalil, but obviously most of his time was in Jerusalem at Al Aqsa Mosque. There are no specific references to as how much he wrote, but we know that الرسالة القدسية في العقائد, and it has been also named رسالة بيت المقدس. Of course, it's بيت المقدس القدسية. It's a reference to the Jerusalem epistle, if you will, in Islamic theology. So he could have written, a good part of Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the religious sciences, Islamic sciences, at Al-Aqsa Mosque, maybe the whole thing. And I did mention that we have more than a whole copy of Ihya Ulumuddin at Al-Aqsa Mosque, a manuscript. So he had this longing to his children, to his native land. There I also chose seclusion out of a desire for solitude and the purification of my heart for the remembrance of God, but current events and important family matters and gaining the necessities for daily living had an effect on the way to realize my desire and troubled the serenity of my solitude, and the pure state of ecstasy occurred only intermittently. But nonetheless, I did not cease to aspire to it. Obstacles would keep me away from it, but I would return to it. For 10 years, I remained in that condition. In the course of those periods of solitude, things impossible to enumerate in or detail in depth were disclosed to me. This much I shall mention, that profit gain, that profit may be derived from it. I knew with certainty that the Sufis are those who uniquely follow the way to God Most High. Their mode of life is the best of all, their meaning the Sufis, their way the most direct of ways, and their ethic the purest. Indeed, were one to combine the insight of the intellectuals, the wisdom of the wise, and the lore of scholars versed in the mysteries of revelation in order to change a single item of Sufi conduct and ethic and to replace it with something better, no way to do so would be found. والقدر الذي أذكره لينتفع به أني علمت يقينا أن الصوفية هم السالكون لطريق الله تعالى خاصة، وأن سيرتهم أحسن السير وطريقهم أصوب الطرق وأخلاقهم أزكى الأخلاق. بل لو جمع عقل العقلاء وحكمة الحكماء وعلم الواقفين على أسرار الشرع من العلماء يغير شيئا من سيرهم وأخلاقهم ويبدلوه بما خير منه لم يجدوا إليه سبيلا. For all their emotions and quiescences, exterior and interior, are learned from the light of the niche of prophecy. And beyond the light of prophecy, there is no light on earth from which illumination can be obtained. In general, how can men describe such a way as this? its purity. The first of its requirements is the total purification of the heart from everything other than God Most High. Its key, which is analogous to the beginning of the prayer, is the utter absorption of the heart in the remembrance of God. Its end is being completely lost in God. But the latter is its end with reference to its initial stages, which just barely fall under the power of choice and personal acquisition. But these are really the beginning of the way, and everything prior to it is like an antechamber for him who follows the path to it. In general, from the very start of the way, revelations and visions begin. من أول الطريقة تبتدئ المكاشفات والمشاهدات. Not revelations in the technical sense. مكاشفات والمشاهدات. Visions, unveiling. I would refrain from using the word revelation because people might mistake this as revelation as wahi. That's not really. We talk about mukashafat and mushahadat. So that when awake, the Sufis see the angels and the spirits of the prophets and hear voices coming from them and learn useful things from them. Then their state ascends from the vision of forms and likeness to stages beyond the narrow range of words, and have always been always. That's not really, of course, that's an exaggeration. I have paid attention many years ago, and I did try to speak about this. When he said ثم يترقى الحال بمشاهدة الصور الأمثال لدرجات يضيق عنها نطاق النطق فلا يحاول معبر أن يعبر عنها إلا اشتمل لفظه على خطأ صريح لا يمكن له الاحتراز عنه. To stages beyond the narrow range of words. So if anyone tries to express them, his words contain evident error against which he cannot guard himself. And I would say that what's going on here in terms of language? Human language is pretty much conditioned by this life. If it were not for revelation, then our language is appropriate for this life. For worldly things, it does include revelation because there is revelation, but without revelation, our language is absolutely restricted to experiences of this world. I don't want to invoke positivism, but that would be pretty much something like that. So in a state where you go beyond vision and you go beyond forms, human language falls short from the ability to express what you experience. That's the meaning that I get. But speaking in general, the matter comes ultimately to a closeness to God, which one group almost conceives of as indwelling, another as union, another as reaching. But all that is wrong. وعلى الجملة ينتهي الأمر إلى قرب يكاد يتخيلونه طائفة الحلول وطائفة الاتحاد وطائفة الوصول وكل ذلك خطأ. But all this is wrong. We have already shown why it is wrong in our book, The Noblest Aim, المقصد الأسنى. But really one intimately possessed by that state ought not to go beyond saying, there was what was of what I do not mention, so think well of it and ask for no account. فكان ما كان مما لست أذكره فظن خيرا ولا تسأل عن الخبر. Generally speaking, anyone who is granted nothing that through fruitional experience thou grasps of the reality of prophecy only the name. The charisms of the saints are in reality the first stages passed through by the prophets. Such was the initial state of the Apostle of God, of the Messenger of God, peace upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he went to Mount Hira, where he would be alone with his Lord and perform acts of worship, so that the Arabs of the desert said, Muhammad indeed passionately loves his Lord. This is a state which one following the way leading to it will verify the fruitional experience, but one to whom such experience is not granted can acquire certain knowledge of that state through experience of others and hearsay, if he frequents the company of the Sufis, so as to have sure understanding of that from observing circumstances accompanying their ecstatic states. Whoever associates with them will derive this faith from them, for they are the men whose associate is never wretched. This is part of the hadith. هم القوم لا يشقى بهم جليسهم. But whoever is not favored with their company must learn the certain possibility of such mystical states through the evidence of apodictic demonstration in the way we have mentioned in the book of the marvels of the heart, Kitab Ajaib al-Qalb, one of the books of the revivification of the religious sciences, Ihya Ulum al-Din. Ascertainment by apodictic proof leads to knowledge. Intimate experience of that very state is fruitional experience. Favorable acceptance of it based on hearsay and experience of others is faith. These then are 3 degrees or levels of knowledge. God raises in degrees those of you who believe and those to whom knowledge is given. يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات. In addition to the men with such levels of knowledge, there are a number of ignorant men who deny its very foundation and are astonished at such words. They listen and scoff, saying, Extraordinary, how they rave. Of such are these, God Most High said, and among them the infidels. And among them are those who listen to you. Then, when they have left you, they say to those who have been given knowledge, What did he say? What did he just say? Those are men whose hearts God has sealed and who follow their own vain desires. ومنهم من يستمع إليك حتى إذا خرجوا من عندك قالوا للذين أوتوا العلم ماذا قال آنفا أولئك الذين طبع الله على قلوبهم واتبعوا أهواءهم إلى قوله تعالى فأصمهم وأعمى أبصارهم. So God renders them deaf and blinds their eyes. What became clear to me of necessity from practicing their way was the true nature and special character of prophecy. So attention must be called to its basis because of the urgent need for it. So again, ومنهم من يستمع إليك حتى إذا خرجوا من عندك قالوا الذين أوتوا العلم ماذا قال آنفا أولئك الذين طبع الله على قلوبهم واتبعوا أهواءهم والذين اهتدوا زادهم هدى وآتاهم تقواهم فهل ينظرون إلا الساعة أن تأتيهم بغتة فقد جاء أشراطها فأنى لهم إذا جاءتهم ذكراهم فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله واستغفر لذنبك والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والله يعلم متقلبكم ومثواكم إلى آخر الآيات. So, inshallah, this is enough for this reading because we have a new topic. القول في حقيقة النبوة واضطرار كافة الخلق إليها. The true nature of prophecy and the need all men have for it. So until tomorrow inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.